side.
I don't have a better
Some things are better
side.
on one side and not on the other.
I don't have a better side. All right, Monica Perez, let's do this because we're
I'm
always wanting to
ready.
share. We're always wanting to share.
I want to share.
Yep, I'm right now. I'm going to share it. If you want to share it,
I'm
you
sharing
can go on and share it right
I'm
now.
sharing it
I'm going to
live
go.
now.
Yep, I'm
with
going to share it
my friend Clint.
right now. Bam. Started a watch party at Connect Marketing because that's my page. I'm also going to start on Marketing Mix Radio, and during the break, I have like 12 pages.
Yeah, you're out
I
there,
do.
man.
Yeah.
You're really putting yourself out there.
And one of these days, I'll make some money.
How do I share the link?
All right. So go to the top of the page
I
just cut and paste that URL, and then you can go to Twitter, which is what I'm doing right now. And look at all this. This is fascinating podcasting right now.
Sorry, forget it. Forget it then.
No, I'm doing it right now, live. Look at this.
Forget it.
I'm doing it right now. Monica Perez, and look at this. You ready?
Yeah.
Bam. The propaganda report, and it's on my YouTube. I mean my Twitter now. There you go. Hey, do me a favor. Have you shared it yet?
I'm sharing it. I did just share it. Why? What do you need?
Nothing. I was going to get you to explain to people why you're on the podcast. You're a host of the Propaganda Report. So tell people what the Propaganda Report is and what your label is as something. You're not an Australian economist. You're an Austrian.
So my name is Monica Perez. I got drafted into being a radio host a long time ago, and I was on WSB, which has a very conservative audience, kind of like you.
Right.
But I'm a libertarian, which in the beginning they thought meant I was a liberal, but I'm actually the most opposite. I'm more opposite of liberal than y'all. And for an Austrian economist, basically is an extreme libertarian. I love the Harry Brown quote, the best of what a libertarian really is a person, someone who believes in individual liberty and personal responsibility on all issues at all times. And I do. So my show is mostly about that. That's gone now, I think, because I was a little too honest about my opinions on the coronavirus. But I could be wrong. Maybe it was just.
And when you say you're gone off WSB, right?
Yeah, but I'm on my podcast, which I do every day, which is great. It's called the Drive Time News Blast. It's under Propaganda Report on your favorite podcasting feed. And it's also at thepropreport.com. That's my URL. And it's 30 minutes of news of the day from a perspective of truth, liberty, and justice. True justice, not social justice, truth and liberty. And I really always have an eye in everything I do to try to defend the Bill of Rights, just trying to kick the can of tyranny for what it's worth.
Well, I sent you a text or a message, I think, I don't know, sometime last week. And I say I sent it. I'm going to stick by that because when we go back and look, I may have forgotten to do it. Mm-hmm. But I meant to. I think you should do a short series of podcasts. Are you ready? And videos. Yeah. Keep them to 3 minutes or less and do one on each Bill of Rights and put them out there.
Oh.
And your take on read it and then give your take on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You read it as is, word for word, and then give your take on it.
I love that idea.
And then what happens is when people and you start getting into conversations and you start talking about it, you can always refer to, hey, look, I've got a 3 minute, video just on this.
And also, I actually just one day for the show, the WSB show, just quick and dirty, read. Now I'm a lawyer, but or whatever. I shouldn't say that. I'm a member of the bar. I went to law school. I graduated. I took the bar. I passed the bar. But
do you have a master's degree too?
In business, yes. And I'm a chartered financial analyst. I have all those things, but I'm mostly just a stay-at-home mom. And so I was just forget everything you ever learned about the Constitution. I just want to read it. And I read it and I was like, okay, these are the enumerated powers. That's what this must mean. That's what that must mean. And then that's when I realized that the Bill of Rights is absolutely tailored simply to restrain the government that you just empowered. So people are like, well, every right isn't in there. You know, that old story about they didn't even want to put a Bill of Rights because it might imply those are your only rights. I don't even believe that. George Mason is my hero. He insisted, or it was his model. And it is directed at expressly limiting the government's power, which they completely ignore. But at least we have a rallying cry that we can stand together on.
We have something to point to and go, hey.
Right. And they can't divide us on it. Well, they can, but
they have.
It's easier to divide you on something that isn't spelled out in plain English than it is that stuff.
Well, I think it would be entertaining. And I think if you did it, kept it kind of short, I think it would be, people would tune in, and it would be like seasoning on the meal of the propaganda report. How's Binkley doing?
He's great. He's got a little more of an entertaining flair. He has a YouTube channel also, and he puts up humorous videos and serious stuff too. He did a thing. We have a Patreon, so we have extra content for people who join. Like, we do a cocktail party on Fridays, which we're doing together. He did something for our patrons yesterday with tinfoil hats, which is Sam Tripoli. It's a more conspiracy oriented thing. We're going to be on that show, I think June 4th.
Now, haven't you been on that before?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So, but and I do, like, I don't mind the conspiracy theory title, but that's not really my stock and trade. I look at the official narrative and I investigate it. And if it doesn't make sense, I point out how it does not make sense. And sometimes I can figure out what really happened or a better narrative that makes sense. So I kind of crack the code and debunk official narratives more than really theorize about what's really going on. Although I speculate what could be happening, I more like to just hold them to the same standards that they hold me to, which is, what's your evidence, what's your sources, does this make sense?
But they have a machine behind. We've talked about this. There's machines. There's big machines. And I've asked you this before. I mean, sometimes when we come on, we talk about where we're at, and we look at the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, which we should. That's our touchstone. That's what we're looking at. But I've also asked solutions other than where we're at, because it's almost like, I told you this, every time I bring up something, it's the mouse in the maze. Oh, nope, that's closed. Turn this way. Oh yeah, it looks like I'm going pretty. Nope, that one's closed too. And so my question is always going to come back to, in reality, what decisions do we have to make? And that's why I think a lot of people end up voting not based on purity of what we know, but based on that mixed with the reality of where we're at.
I've become even more radical recently, which is hard to believe.
You're going to get us both kicked off. And I'm just telling everybody right now, I am not the radical.
No, he's not radical. That's why I like you. You try to keep me grounded. I was going to say keep me grounded. That's not possible.
By the way, thanks for these before you go down the.
You're welcome. Well, who complained about an echo last time?
There's complainers out there. I don't even read comments unless they pop up during the thing.
I like the feedback a little bit. If it's well meant, if it's trolly, I don't like it.
Okay, so you've gotten a little more radical.
I got a little more radical in that, like, I kept trying to figure out. I totally kicked the can with Bill of Rights, but I only really came to that kind of practical center when I started doing the radio show. But before that, I had kind of realized that a self-limiting government. People say that libertarian, like a libertarian society, is a utopian fantasy, to have an anarcho-capitalist society. I think the concept of self-limiting governments is a utopian fantasy. They are clearly not limiting themselves. So I was kind of just like not even worrying about it.
Right.
But you have kids and you worry. And I thought maybe the whole the whole struggle of civilization is to just keep tyranny at bay. So maybe we can use the Bill of Rights to keep tyranny at bay, kick that can and wait for the next revolution or whatever. I was just kind of going with the flow. But I'm starting to think, with the technology that is at the hands of the elite who are orchestrating this lockdown, for example, around the world, if with that kind of technology, the contact tracing, which can get ahead of the Fourth Amendment, like if they don't want us talking to each other in person, not on this where they can monitor it, if they don't want, they're going to say those two guys are getting together. They could use that for evil. And that's why we had the Fourth Amendment, which isn't going to. So I think there might be a real problem with the whole system, that like a revolution within the system wouldn't even work, that you might have to just step out. Like the next step for me from being an anarcho-capitalist might be to be an agorist, which is somebody who wants to grow their own food. So they're not like begging, you're like, you want to beg for a good guy with a gun. You want to beg for a good guy who has a piece of meat.
I've got a buddy who is a Mormon, and he has, 7, 8 kids. He's a great guy. He's one of my good friends.
He's got a basement full of stuff, don't he?
And he's got his own garden. He has he has it all. I mean, he's got his generators, freshwater systems, but he's also he's a financial planner, and he's a super nice guy, and he's plugged in, but at the drop of a hat, he can go, okay, turn the light switches off. We're fine. We're good.
They are told to do that, from what I understand, and they're directed to do it. And it's a very practical solution. I wonder where.
Well, the things we call crazy now are practical. You know what I'm saying?
I grew up with a garage full of Sam Andy dried foods. Anybody who's like around my age knows that was the only place you could get $5,000 worth of dried food. And we were broke, poor. We had one car garage, and it was full of this nasty, nasty dried food, which when my father got over the Red Scare, he made us eat it.
Oh. Okay.
Ugh, like dried applesauce, like.
That's another podcast. That's a therapy podcast we'll have with you. Well,
no, I love the guy. I'm just saying.
I wrote this down.
People were scared before and thought about this stuff.
I wrote this down when you were talking about utopian worlds. I've said this a bunch, not just with you, but with other folks. I think any philosophy, any theory, any model that we put out, that anybody's ever put out, is all utopian, because the one thing that I think we forget is that once you start putting human beings into the machine and the cogs, you have selfishness, you have greed, you have people who are aggressive, you have type A's, you have people pleasers, you have people who are liars, you have people who are super honest. Some people are too honest. You have all these different mechanisms inside us as humans, and you throw us into this system that's supposed to be, okay, 1 + 1 = 2, 2 + 2 = 4, and it's never like that, because then somebody's pulling from here and putting in there, and we forget that human beings are designed to screw this up.
This is why I've gotten more radical. I'm interviewing a guy tomorrow, Bellamy Fitzpatrick, that you can find on Propaganda Report podcast feed in a couple of days. He's what's called a green anarchist. Now, green sounds very environmentalist, whatever, but separate from that, it stems from this kind of anti-technology standpoint, where the actual answer is that technology itself makes human actualization impossible. That if you can't engage in autonomous, meaningful, self-directed, which I guess is autonomous work, you will never be fulfilled. And as we get further and further away from that, which then might also sound like kind of Marxist, that's not where I'm going, but as you get further and further away from that, you have like more and more neuroses, and like kids are on Prozac and stuff. But what you're saying reminds me of something I heard Bellamy Fitzpatrick say on a podcast recently, which is like his idea, and there's kind of support for this evidence, that the ideal community, human community, is 150 people. Because that's how many connections you can kind of really keep tabs on. Right. You can't really be lied to and stuff like that. And you can coordinate. But he was saying, like, if you had even 1,000 people community, and a guy like Bill Gates comes along and tells you he's going to hold you down and put pathogenic DNA into your bloodstream, cutting your veins open and stuff, he'd be a jerk and you would laugh at him. But when he has an army and you've all given up your rights, and there's technology that can make that happen, and there's propaganda that can make you believe it's necessary, then you are in danger.
That's called neighborhoods. So when I grew up, we had neighborhoods, and you kind of went to school in the neighborhood you grew up in, and people didn't go to other schools that were across town or in different zip codes.
That's what busing was for, to destroy that, in my opinion.
Well, and you rode your bikes with your friends, and moms and dads didn't have to know where you were at every second of every day. And I said this before, there's been some bad houses, some people who have done some bad things in like houses around our neighborhoods that I grew up in. In other words, they become crack houses or something like that in really good neighborhoods. Well, when I grew up, the neighbors would have taken care of that. The dads would have gone and knocked. All the dads were around. Most of the dads were around. They would have gone and knocked on some doors, and they'd been like, "Hey, whatever this is happening." There'd been 9 dads over there, and they'd all have been like, "We're not doing that." There'd been moms over there.
They would say, everyone would know about it and tell the kids to stay away from that, and the other moms would watch and tell you, you don't even have to violate that guy's private property rights. You could go over and say to him, "Hey, I'm watching you. I know you're up to no good."
Yeah, the people I grew up with would have violated his property rights and knocked on his front door.
I understand.
And they would have quickly been like,
you
"Hey,
could knock on his door."
Oh no, and then just to be clear, this has been within the last 5 to 8 years. My dad walked across the street and had that conversation several times, and he wouldn't have been alone. Yeah. He wouldn't have been alone 30 years ago.
My father had the same mentality. He would tell you it was cowardly to call the cops. He's like, you can't go over and have a man-to-man conversation with that guy.
That's right.
And you're going to call a cop to try to do your bidding for you. And then you want him to call the cops on you. No. So, but the thing is, yes, that was the neighborhood. And what people didn't realize, my father realized it, but what most people didn't realize is by giving up those principles, those really solid foundational principles that these are the limits of the government that you agreed to, now they set it up for abuse. It was inevitable.
I have a page full of tweets that you and I are going to go over.
Okay.
But I gotta say 2 things to you first.
I don't care about the tweets
that are not on my piece of paper here. The tweets that you've done on your Twitter account.
Yeah.
One is, I think, and again, what I think is, I'm wrong all the time. So only listen to me this much. But I think the education system is due for a big change very soon, because if by some chance we start homeschooling more, I think it is a door for the government to get into your house on how you are teaching and what you are teaching your own individual kids. I think we've cracked that door, and I don't think it's by mistake. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. That's very interesting. Today, for the first time ever, I heard on Sirius headlines, Fox News headlines, that I listened to on the Sirius, that there was an advertisement for an online school of a particular kind. And Ron Paul was just leading his school revolution. He wrote a book like that. He had all the resources at home. And if that's the way the internet was going to go, the government had to, or whoever the powers that be, had to hijack that. They have to insert what they want. Plus, 2 other things. One is there's 2-way surveillance, plus everything you say to everybody is going to be recorded.
Yep.
And the way they're going to do it, I don't know if this is for sure, but I believe this was a kind of official direction that they were going to have kind of AI do it, artificial intelligence that will pace with you, and you can either expand the body of the work that you're doing or progress to a higher level, but you will be totally disconnected from peers. And I don't necessarily mind if you are totally disconnected from peers, as long as you have some human community, like a variety. Like I didn't mind the old schoolhouse where you had different grades in the same room. I'm not saying I need everybody to be in 8th grade together, but what you do, it's actually probably better to have different levels for a variety of reasons, but it's going to be isolating, and we will just be more cog-like. The STEAM thing, bad. You don't want to disconnect people from the liberal arts. The reason they called them the liberal arts is because it was the stuff that the Greek slaves were not allowed to learn in Rome. Well, because it would teach them about civics.
And I also think, though, it's a way for the more control we give in a family institute to the government, I think gives them more ability to go, okay, so we're going to help you with this. Now, here are the 5 classes that are mandatory that you teach, and they've got to go through the protocol before they move to the next level. And one of those things, instead of being a local thing decided on by my school board, now it's mandatory for maybe things that are going to be taught or shown to my child that I would not endorse. And if I had a problem with it, I could go down and talk to my county commission, my school board member, or vote on it locally. That may be taken out of my hands.
And maybe it'll be like trying to get help from Google or Apple. Did you ever try to get help? It gets extremely funneled into chats. You don't get to actually talk to somebody. There's very little recourse. A lot of times, when you talk to those people, you can tell they're reading from a script. I was trying to get my internet fixed. The people were would start over. I would make a comment and they would start over and say the same things over as if they were AI. They weren't, but they will be.
They just won't pass you along. They just won't pass you along in the school system unless you hit their mandatory requirement, especially if they're going to help you. That's the way I look at it. That's the fear as a parent.
And how are you going to work when all the jobs are now going to be corporatized? It's only going to be places that have survived this and probably survived with government help and reciprocal obligations to the government.
Out in California, didn't they just say that we don't need ham radios anymore? Don't they have something out there going on about ham radios? No more ham radios?
Didn't hear. Are they banning them?
Hold on, stay right there. That's the great thing about
I wouldn't be surprised. It makes perfect sense.
Let's see, ham radios. Yeah. California.
Wow.
Maybe it's not California. I thought it was, and that's the great thing.
If it's anywhere, it would be. Maybe Hawaii. Hawaii is like the only one more left than California.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to figure it out. I could have sworn. Yeah, well, this was as of last. Well, no, I think that one's more recent. It says California has said that ham radios are no longer needed. That was last year, so I don't know where we're at on that. I just saw an article posted up, and I'm sure you have enough listeners that over the time of this video, some of them will pop in and bring me up to speed on it.
I don't know. Some people were confused or had a hard time making comments directly through my Facebook page. Maybe they should go to yours, Clint Powell, if they can. I don't know.
Yeah, but
Ken
I can.
Is here.
Yep,
Hi,
Ken. I graduated high school with Ken. He lives in Atlanta now. I think Ken still lives in Atlanta.
I wonder if he ever heard my show.
He might have. Yeah, I grew up with Ken, man. You know, it's funny when you see people you went to high school with, or actually we grew up even younger than high school. We were in elementary school and stuff together. And you see him, you know, he's a good dad and we all got decent jobs. And I'm sure some people look around and go, man, I can't believe that guy made it.
I'm not sure if it's a privilege, a male privilege or a female privilege, but basically nobody can find me because I have my husband's name.
Oh.
Like Monica Perez is just not somebody anybody's looking for.
I don't have enough podcast space to talk about male privilege and female privilege. That's a big podcast. Oh, you're kidding. I didn't know you did kidding and sarcasm. Remember? I didn't know you did that. Hey, let's
don't get me wrong. Oh my gosh, these people are gonna no. Right. Because people think I'm like a liberal. Everybody thinks I'm a liberal just because I'm a chick.
No, here's what
female discrimination.
I've told you this before. I'll get messages from people that are, you know, air quote liberals, and then messages from my friends who are air quote, you know, conservative. And why does she not like Trump? She is an anti-Trump. How can she be against conservatives? How can she be for Trump? And I'm like,
Trump's
both sides.
Democrat.
Well, both sides are a little ticked off when you come on sometimes,
oh, yeah.
And that's good.
No, people think I'm People think I'm pro-Trump too. I'm not anti-Trump or pro-Trump. I'm not anti-anybody because I think they're all puppets. I might as well be anti-Humpty Dumpty. Like they're all puppets in my opinion.
No, you like
just
Trump.
I'm not a hater. What, they're not?
You like Trump. You do. Just admit it here. Let's get it out. I
certainly don't dislike him. I
Ken
do
Jones.
not dislike him. I don't look at him and think.
He now lives in St. Augustine, Florida. But I thought he was in Atlanta for a while.
Augustine. That's where the nice grass is. St. Augustine.
All right, let's go to tweets. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's go. I've been following. So how many people do you have on your Twitter account now?
My Twitter account is huge, and I didn't realize that I happen to be good at Twitter because I can't do like Instagram or anything.
Okay.
Wiggling this camera. It ticks up like 100 more every day almost. It's 12.5 thousand.
Wow. Just a couple weeks ago, you were at 10. Good job.
10. Yeah, I remember when it went 10, and my husband was like, you're gonna
all right, so you posted something.
I keep wiggling the camera. I'm sorry.
No, it's just me. I'm doing this a lot. I'm just going to do this when you're talking to me. I'm just going to shake back and forth so you think you're hitting the camera. So annoying. LA County State.
I'm trying to like get close to the mic. I need a big mic arm. Sorry, too much behind the scenes stuff. You don't want that?
No, I don't care. I don't care. I like it. You know me. I'm as flexible about this stuff. I love the transparency. Continue.
See, they don't realize that during the actual break, you get all serious and you're like, with the camera wiggling and the this and the that.
Now I can tell you what she can add to your bio. She's a liar. You can add that to your bio. And
I was just trying to trigger you because nothing could be further from the truth. Nothing at all. As a matter of fact, I don't even know when he hits record half the time.
we started an hour and a half ago.
Yeah, I know. No, I think we did.
LA County, stay at home until August. You tweeted about that.
What is the logic behind that? Can anyone tell me how something with a 14 to 24 day incubation period can still be around in the middle of March? Either the thing since the middle of March, either the lockdown works or it doesn't work. How is what is the logic?
Well, the lockdown was, and I think this goes back to the media. The lockdown was never designed to wait the virus out. The lockdown was designed so we didn't overrun our emergency rooms and hospitals, and then everybody above that line passed, or had it worse than everybody below the line. It was just designed to kind of slowly integrate the virus. It was going to happen anyway.
Okay, then let me tell you something.
Yeah.
That's important because I remember that from the beginning. They said this is not even going to reduce the number of deaths. It's just going to slow down the flow through in the hospital. Can I tell you, I have finally found the numbers I was looking for, one from the CDC and one from the American Council of Health and Science or something like that. I've tweeted them both a couple of times. The one from the CDC shows the deaths so far from February 2nd to date. So I think the last time I looked was February 2nd to May 2nd in this country. Total deaths, something like 800,000 deaths over that 10-week period. So I looked back.
I don't think 800,000 deaths.
Not from COVID, just total deaths.
Okay.
Total deaths.
Yeah.
So then I went back because you can't trust those numbers. So I just wanted to know if there's a pandemic, you're going to have more deaths than normal. Okay. Just more deaths than normal. That's all I'm looking for. So I went back and I finally found, and this is how I did it. I Googled, do people die in the winter? Do more people die in the winter? Because I wanted those death numbers broken out by month. And I found it for 2019. And so in 2019, so the average on the CDC numbers for this period, February to May, is 8,000 deaths a month, total deaths. Last year, the average deaths for, I think, January and February were 8,400, 8,500, because more people die in the winter. So over all of 2019, the average weekly death rate in this country was 7,700, which is a little below the 8,000 that we're seeing for the Corona times.
Okay.
However, the second half of the year, or December to whatever, May or something, is higher. And the other stuff is lower than the average. So we should be in an above average range right now just because of the time of year. So it looks to me, it's pretty clear from the numbers that the deaths are the same or even lower. Now, you could say that when everyone stays home, some people don't die of other things they might die of.
They may not get the flu.
But what you're saying is that number is higher than the number of COVID deaths, right? So it's higher. And if it's higher, then why aren't we doing that forever? Why were we ever allowed out of our house in the first place if average death is more than COVID death?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? If death is death, preventable death is if that's the standard, the number is exactly the same.
Well, the people looking at it now going, well, you can also go, well, look how fewer deaths there are right now on the roads from driving. It's because nobody's driving. And so then you have to say, but if we start driving again, deaths on the road are going to go back up. Why? Because more people are driving.
Yeah, there will probably be more deaths. And people are also not getting any of the colds that are on their, friends.
Right. Well, I just think, you do the propaganda report. So I've kind of become tuned in, and I've always, I think the older you get, the more tuned in you are about how much BS is out in the world. But I'm tuned in now to how the message has changed over the last 2 or 3 months from the mass media. It's designed to not overwhelm the emergency systems and the hospitals. Okay, well, that worked. And now it's not, I don't even hear about overwhelming it. Now it's to prevent all the deaths, which I understand. But, I've listened to a lot of podcasts, really smart people, because I'm not that smart. So I just kind of hear smart people and say it out loud again. But at the end of it, there is a way to do this to protect the people who are the most vulnerable and for other people to make a decision to go. You know what I'm saying? Because right now we've given up our freedom.
Healthy people has never made sense, and people haven't done it. Now, I just want to say about, you can quibble about those numbers, but the numbers are so tight that this is not a pandemic. And the other thing is the death rate from people being on ventilators is very high.
Like 90%, isn't it?
Yeah, it's something like that.
Yeah.
People are being put on ventilators that they would not otherwise have been put on. So it is possible, if I finally do get all the right numbers, that the entire increase in mortality from this thing versus other similar viruses is entirely due to the change in protocol, which means that their policies is the sole source of the deaths, of any increased deaths.
Well,
and it's possible you could do the numbers and find that. I'm waiting to see.
I just think the media has really misrepresented themselves so much throughout this, because if you remember, for weeks and weeks, it was the ventilators. Trump's a bad guy. Your team's doing this. And now all of a sudden we're going to have extra ventilators because we don't need the ventilators. And the reason
ventilators are bad.
Well, the reason
they're a last resort thing.
The reason I even bring it up is because then they turn right around and start asking us who we should trust, who we shouldn't trust. And I want to go, guys and girls, it's easy to understand that you have an agenda. Not only do we, the people, see what we look for, but you furnish it. You know, we go looking for the donut, you have the donuts. And it's our fault. I mean, we know when Chuck, edits the video with Barr, whether you like Barr or not, that was crappy journalism.
You know,
that was
Jimmy
crappy
Kimmel
journalism.
did the exact same thing with Mike Pence a couple of days before. So that's the kind of thing I don't take at face value. They're feeding the dialectic. They're keeping us engaged in the two sides of this. They're keeping us from uniting. They're making it left and right.
They have to, because nobody, I'm going to read those comments.
Yeah, okay.
But they have to keep us like that, because if we don't click on the headlines, if they don't have their little group of people that looked for something to confirm what they believe, if they lose us that do the clicking, then they lose the ad dollars. Then they don't have ratings. They can't lose the ad dollars too. So I just think, and that goes for both sides. So I'm not talking about one side over the other. Can I read you a couple questions or not?
Yeah. Before we lose Eric, he wanted to know.
Yeah, that's it.
I thought that was an interesting one. And it's one I was going to ask that Bellamy Fitzpatrick guy too, because he might know it. Oh, look at you. That's fantastic.
Yep.
Does Monica think the coronavirus and reaction to it will meaningfully change people's desire for more or less government? Will it move the needle? This is what I was thinking. They're obviously putting it into the two camps to just enhance the polarization, it seems like to me. But what I wanted to ask Bellamy was if he felt that his inaugural essay was called An Invitation to Desertion. And he suggested that people just step out. You don't have to save the world. You're not going to save the world. Especially when technology is going to dominate the world, and that you can just step out and do permaculture. That's what he's doing, I think, just like growing trees and living in a small community. Now, I think that there is definitely an increased desire for food autonomy, for people to be able to grow their food, to have some more control over themselves. And I think that would also lead to people knowing that they need the leeway from government in order to be able to carve that out, unless they have enough people to actually overthrow. That might be offset if this pandemic thing, if this virus mania continues to get into people's heads, so they think that forever, like if they've really conditioned the next generation to think that we need the government to exist as biological organisms in a biological environment. And I mean, kids can be really stupid these days, especially if they're getting their thinking piped in from the government directly into the matrix, that they plug into the back of their heads. I think it will probably be offset by, the need for more will probably be offset by the desire for the need for the government to back off will be offset by the desire for the government to take more control, I think. And I think the government, of course, will get more control.
I think so my 2 cents, because people care more what you think, but I'm going to jump in here because I think it's doing exactly what it's designed to do. And that's further dig the ditch deeper between the two sides. And here's why. You're going to have a lot of people that do exactly what you said, and they're going to want to be more autonomous. They're going to go do their own, but you're going to have a lot of people that start getting those stimulus checks and going back to work. I make more money this way. And why is this? Hey, my insurance is easier now. I can afford stuff. Why is it not this way more? And I think we're going to see the divide get bigger, and the government's going to stretch in and hold the hands and say, okay, guys, we'll connect the two.
What they're doing, what we see them doing. Did you just cough in my general direction?
I coughed this way. And I have a, hold on a second. There, you're safe.
I know. I was wearing a mask before because I had to go to a store and I forgot how to cough into my elbow. I'm like, can I just cough into the mask? No, people looking at me. I'm like, I think it's dust. I think it's the damn mask. But the one last thing I will say is you can see actually what connects what I said and what you said. You can see that they're getting those people who want more government to harsh on the people who want less. They will not live and let live.
They're creating, and again, we are our own worst enemy, because what happens is, and I don't know if we can fix it, because once I know that me and Monica are different, I've almost been trained through social, because I've seen a lot of good come from social media the last 2 months. I've been proud of a lot of people posting positive stuff, people helping their neighbors. But I've also seen this judgmental, moral finger pointing of, you don't want my grandmother to live. Well, you don't want my small business to live. And instead of there being some sort of, I went to school with you, I know you have a good heart. Instead of there being this, understand common sense. We just thrown it out the window. It kind of sucks.
And it's so weird because do you really think that people like 60 million people who voted for Trump are inherently evil, or the 60 million people who voted for Hillary are inherently evil? People are like, well, maybe, I get that. But I was going to say that we should have a little name for our thing, Clinton. It should be, I was thinking originally that it should be, can a conservative and a libertarian be friends in Trump's America? Because it's divisive on the right, but it might just be, can a pro-mask and anti-mask be friends in the Corona times?
And here's our logo. You can be like this, and I'll be like this.
Exactly.
Hey,
the libertarian logo is a porcupine.
Yeah, between the porcupine, the jackass, and the elephant.
Yeah, you can be the elephant.
There's another question. Can you read that, or do you want me to read it?
Aren't our laws made to sue companies if they cause us harm? Let us go back to work, and if businesses are negligent because of this, and it is proved, let people sue them, right? Well, I think so, but what they're trying to do is the exact opposite. They're trying to take liability away from the people who are on the ground. It's just like the payola. It's just like Pelosi wanting to send everybody a check. If you disconnect the actions with the consequences, you are going to have the people who are doing the actions not worry about it. And the actions, consent to being governed is as far as your responsibility. I mean, well, it at least goes that far. So when Pelosi and those people are doing stuff, we are implicitly consenting to it. And then why are people consenting to it? Because they're benefiting from it and they're getting paid off. And similarly, if you knew that putting somebody on a ventilator for having low blood oxygen, maybe you think it's because of the mask they're wearing. Just take your mask off. Oh, no, we're going to jam a tube down your throat. Boy, you'd be in trouble if you made that decision in a normal time. Yep. But if you're told that that's the protocol, and you're insulated from that decision, but not other decisions, it's going to affect the outcome.
And I've had enough conversations with you that I think he's right on, though, right? Basically what you believe is let everybody open up. The market will make its own mind up. If I think you have been negligent, there are remedies in place. If you as the business owner do not want to take that risk, you can remain shut.
Yes. Oh, that's great. That's the kind of system I love. I mean, personal responsibility. I know a lot of people don't want tort reform, and maybe it does need to be reformed, but I mean, at this point, I am absolutely, I've been a fan of the common law, case by case, tort law, always, because it takes principles and applies them to individual cases that if they can be applied directly, they're applied directly. So there's nothing new under the sun. You could resolve all these issues and people would know. They could ask their lawyers.
I love it. Lawyers. And I loved it when Pelosi talks about, blames because these people are just, meanwhile, it's like we're under the two big adults that are throwing rocks at each other. And we're just watching the rocks go over, hoping they don't hit us, because she's talking about pauses. We can't take a pause in giving the stimulus money. Meanwhile, just a month or so ago, she paused it twice so she could add more pork belly, more spending in it for things that are, if you go line item by line item, where this money that's getting passed through is going, it drives you crazy. You're like, what are you talking about?
One of the tweets I put out today, I haven't had a chance to really decipher it, to pull apart the numbers, but the concept intrigued me. It was an analysis of the impact, the benefit of bailouts on the different segments of society. So it was the top 1% and the bottom 50%, and the benefit accrued 50% to the top 1%. But I always think, it seems to me across the board, not just for financial reasons, but political reasons, that the middle class and the middle and the upper middle class, the most productive people, the best kind of educated, the most practical, the people who can do things, and, a guy who, a certified electrician, or a guy who runs a business, a contractor, or a doctor. These are the people who really understand stuff, and they make pretty good money for people who make who get an income like that, not just from stocks throwing off dividends. Those are the people who are always kind of attacked by, they never get any of the bailout money. Their taxes go up. In this case, I'm afraid for small businesses that the loans it'll be very hard for them to get repaid at the end, or really
forgiven.
Fear for them. Yeah, because, and this is what I think the reason is, I think if you have the super, super upper echelon and the super lower echelon, kind of third worldy. You have especially in a democracy, you have all those poor people. If you have 51% of the people who are kind of on the dole, they will always vote for the big programs, which is why the Democrat states are the really, really rich states. The big, big government programs accrue to the rich people who are government connected. And those guys on the bottom, they'll take it. Plus, then they get all public transportation, all the stuff that subsidizes that real low level of wages that goes up to the top. But the middle class and the upper middle class, yeah, just the class that actually pays income taxes. People who get capital gains don't pay income taxes. That's why Warren Buffett doesn't pay income tax. When they want to increase the income tax rate, it's not about increasing the taxes on the rich. It's increasing the taxes on the most productive. And I think if that class were to accumulate enough capital to like retire early or to fund, they'd go Ron Paul, they'd go to DC. They'd say, I'm hanging up my shit. I'm taking my shingle down. I'm going to DC and I'm going to stick to my guns because I'm a guy who cares. I'm not a political class and I'm not a dependent class. And those are always under constant attack to the point where this might be the last straw for them. It really might be a third worlding of this country now.
I think you should read this one. Thank you, Gary Miller. We just talked about that.
This is why I'm healthier than Clint. I think he's afraid of the life-giving sun.
I go outside all the time. You probably need
to wear sunscreen. I don't think you're ready.
Well, plus, okay, look, I've got lights issues. I'm trying to figure out lighting issues. Is that better? Does that look better now?
Maybe Move I should just a little bit more over.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm cackling. Excuse me for cackling.
I'll just do this. I'll just peek over it and do it. I don't know how to figure the light in here. I'm working on it, Gary Miller. I'm working on it.
You need to have an Edison light, the yellow ones.
I've got a picture that you showed me of your studio. It's awesome. You tweeted something about the Fed and Pelosi. The economy is going to be spooked. Is that what we were just talking about? Is that kind of what we were just talking about?
So
right.
I saw that all this big talk from Pelosi of like the $3 trillion stimulus package. I mean, just try to wrap your mind around the size of the deficit this year and the relative value of
the size of our economy.
National debt. I mean, the economy, I think, let's just say in really, really round numbers, the economy is maybe $20 trillion and the debt is going to be $25 trillion. I'm sure the economy is bigger than that. Oh, no, not this year. The economy is shrinking. The tax base is shrinking. The deficits are going up. The debt. This will be a bankruptcy level debt to GDP ratio. But her stimulus package, when I saw it come out, I thought, okay, the stock market's going to rally because this is a transfer directly from the taxpayer to owners of assets. There's a small amount that's going to give the checks to the people who, that she's paying off to support Democrats. But the stock market did not rally and it actually went down because at the same time as she was announcing this, Powell came out and said, the Fed chair, Powell, right, which they just hang on his every word. He said, unless the government does something, this thing is going to go up in flames.
Like they've not done something already.
Yeah, right. So he was doing that, I think, because if he gets the stock market to crash, then Pelosi will get the backing she needs for the stimulus package. And if the stock market was rallying, people can't really make that connection. They're freaks when it's just like a visual for the state of the economy. But I don't have high hopes for the economy.
It's all bumper stickers. It's all bumper stickers and headlines as far as I'm concerned.
Well, can I tell you a funny bumper sticker?
No. Real quick. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
For a long time, I would see the bumper stickers that said Democrats would put on their car, any functional adult 2020.
Yeah.
And they literally could not achieve that.
That's great.
They couldn't clear that bar.
Yeah.
That's just funny.
Yeah. God. And, they pulled the clip down and I said this to you the last time. I feel bad for Biden. I feel bad for Joe Biden. And the reason, okay, well, he's doing a great job then, because when he went on for that live event, they've pulled the video down when he was like, am I on? I saw my grandfather. I'm like, oh, man.
Yes, I think he's probably been watching videotapes of your grandfather because I believe that he is sitting on top of $1 billion corruption charge, scandal, criminal action.
Well, I've said this to you.
There should be a criminal investigation against them and their business in China, too.
Just be careful. I mean, just watch who he picks.
He's Vinny the Chin.
When he picks the vice president, whoever his running mate is going to be your president. I've said that 100%.
Well, I think Trump is going to be your president.
No, but I'm saying if you elect Joe Biden, you're not electing Joe Biden.
Yeah, Binkley and I have a theory that Stacey Abrams will be his VP, and then she's such a masterful loser that she'll use that. She'll be the imaginary president. She'll say a bunch of stuff. But do you remember well, I don't know if you're too young, but you're too Southern.
I'm older than you.
To remember, you're way older than.
I'm like 10 years older than you.
Remember what we talked about during the break? You're way older than me.
I'm like 15 or 20 years older than you.
Always say you're way older than me. So Vinny the Chin was a mobster in New York who was on trial. See, I'm from New York. Could you tell?
Yeah, a little bit.
So he was a mobster from New York, and he would go for walks in his bathrobe. I don't know if he actually showed up at court in his bathrobe, but he was like going up for murder or whatever, and he would just hobble around in his bathrobe, and we all figured he was just faking it so that he did not have to like go to death row.
And they would take it easy on him. You know, I've got a
Biden the Chin.
There's a comedian that's from New York, and I cannot remember what her name was. I heard her do a thing about when she went to the South to do comedy. She went to the comedy clubs, and she goes, and I came back home to New York, and all my friends were like, you know, how was it in the South? Were they slow-witted? And she goes, no, they're really smart. She goes, but they're scary. And she goes, her friends were like, but you're connected. Your family has loose connections to the mob in New York. What do you mean they're scary? You grew up with scary people. She goes, no, the mob will keep you. In the South, the mob will kill you. In the South, they keep you. And I thought it was a really good thing. I was like, that's true.
Deliverance thing.
Yeah. Yes.
You know, exactly. Like in the basement.
Absolutely. You know, puts the lotion on its skin.
Yes.
All right. Another tweet from Monica.
Yes, go for it,
the pandemic filmmaker, Judy. I'm thinking her name is Mikovits.
Yeah, I think it's Mikovits.
She's admitted to some mistakes. And your tweet was, well, that was quick. So what does that mean?
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
I actually felt a little nervous hitting this so hard in the beginning, but the day that clip, it was like 20 minutes. It was a clip from the pandemic, the movie.
Yeah.
Right. The day that clip came out, I got texts, tweets, DMs, emails with it in it the day it came out. And I was like, whoa, that doesn't happen for truth. So let's just start there. So
wow, that's a great quote.
Yeah, thank you.
Good for you.
But so many people who I respect sent it to me. I decided to approach it with hope springs eternal. I decided to approach it with an open mind. So I watched it, and she really, I mean, I didn't watch it. I listened to it while I was walking. And so I didn't see the visual stuff, but I was immediately put off by some of the things she said. She said she was an HIV researcher who contributed to isolating the HIV virus. And I'm reading I would say, definitive book on that called Inventing the AIDS Virus, that the HIV virus has never been purified. Maybe it's like, quote, isolated, but she should know that there are a lot of problems with the very concept of the HIV virus. She said a lot of things that in my research and people I've talked to just did not ring true about the nature of viruses, and the fact that she was working on some of that stuff that should have been made me think she could be an inside job right there. So, and the first thing she said in the thing was like, I was held for 5 days without charges. Now that's a pretty radical statement. So I looked her up on Wikipedia, and like in the first paragraph, it said she was charged with this, and here's the source for that. So I knew she lied, and I was like, or whatever, that was not true. Maybe it was edited poorly. I don't know. But I was like, they're going to put, this stuff is waiting to be discovered by the opposition. This is a gift to the opposition, and probably intentionally so.
I was going to ask, do you think they put that out there, counter espionage or something?
But I hit it so hard day one when people were absolutely excited about it that somebody, DM'd me and just like, you're just an asshole. Like, why can't we have our fun, And, why can't, I'm just so sick of the negativity and everything's a conspiracy with you. And I'm like, I didn't say anything about a conspiracy. I just call BS on her. Maybe it's a conspiracy. I really don't know. But what she said was wrong, so I don't believe her. So I don't think she has credibility. And then she said things are wrong about herself, and now that's coming out, and the other side is so happy because it discredits everything anyone says that questions the COVID narrative.
And that's what I think. And I think in our zeal or zest or whatever word you want to use, I think in that we sometimes throw the baby out with the bathwater. We go, we're so wanting to be right and prove the other team wrong that we say things, we post stuff, we share stuff without doing any research. And then all it takes is one little thread and somebody pulls on it and they go, oh, well, that's wrong. That's not true. Or your guy did this, your girl did that. And now I get to dismiss all of it, which there may be truth in there.
Oh, I made up an expression for that. It's a little off color, Clint, but not everybody can realize it's off color. Taint agent. I think only Southerners maybe know that's an off color. Yeah.
Congratulations. You just
did I make you blush? You could use a little color, honey.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I finally have brought you the attorney and master's degree down to my level. You're welcome.
Yes, that's
welcome.
true. And I don't like to work blue.
All right, here we go. Another tweet. GOP is ahead in California. Some of the races in California.
Oh, it's my tweet.
Yeah. I hope you saw it. Did you see your tweet? Because
I needed like a cackle filter. You know that there's like a pop filter for tweets? I need to not cackle.
So the GOP, if I'm not mistaken, even today, some of the results came back. The GOP is gaining a little ground out there in the West Coast.
State?
Yeah.
Well, California, I think it's the Golden State. California a lot of times doesn't even have parties. Like it is so impossible for a Republican to win that they won't even put an R next to their name on the ballot. That's how crazy it is out there. It's just like one amorphous party kind of. So I wonder if that's like really, I don't know. I mean, Darrell Issa, I think had an R next to his name, but I'm kind of torn about this one because it had been my contention for a long time that Trump in his second term, in order to get a multi-trillion-dollar Green New Deal infrastructure project through,
which we're kind of already going down that road anyway.
Yeah, and that's his thing. It's what he said the day he got elected. He didn't say anything else. That's the only policy he referred to the day he got elected. So if they have a Democrat-controlled Congress, both houses, and he's a rubber stamp, then you're done. So they get everything they want. And I feel like that would be just an easy path for the globalists to take. Now, there's this coronavirus thing I've been reading some of the like scenarios that the World Economic Forum, the Rockefeller Foundation, Gates, that they have done in advance. There's been numerous of them. The government's done them too about pandemics. And I guess the way the people who try to control the world, and I think probably do, they certainly control governments, academia, and the media, it seems to me that what they do is they play out scenarios. So like, was Ted Cruz or Donald Trump going to win the nomination? I don't know. And I'm not sure that they knew or cared, because Ted Cruz would have had the Canadian citizenship constitutional crisis to harp on, whereas Trump's like Russia thing is kind of weak, in my opinion. So I think they set out different scenarios and see how it works. So will they go for the, Democratic legislators and the Republican rubber stamp executive, or will they go for more of a feeling of nationalism versus internationalism, fascism versus communism, like get more GOP in there so that you can have more MAGA hats protesting while Democrats fight for, masks and life, or whatever. I don't know. But so it could go either way. I still think their best bet, they'll get the most done by having Congress, Dem, and Trump in the White House. But I'm not as committed to it as I was before the Corona times.
All right, here we go. A couple more tweets and a comment I got, and then we're going to read another question we have up here.
Okay.
We've already talked about that face mask or no face mask. You're a no face mask person. Real quick, did you read about in Kentucky, they are going to start using ankle bracelets on some people that have been tested positive coronavirus and that refuse to do the stay-at-home order? That's a CNN. Did you read that? Hold on a second.
No.
I want to make sure I'm correct on this. Hold on.
But I think it might.
Can you read that?
Oh, almost. Yeah. Ankle monitors ordered for Louisville, Kentucky residents exposed to COVID-19 who refused to stay at home.
That's CNN.
And do we consent? You know, let me ask you a question.
That was a couple. That was, and that's an article is a couple weeks old too. So
yeah, I want to ask you a question. I've been wanting to do this 4th of July march on DC. I was looking into how to permit it. I was reaching out to people who have done big organizational marches before. I marched against Obamacare every time there was a march, which was 2 or 3 times, and I just can't see a path. I can't see a plan to have a national march. I really feel like the organizations I normally reach out to don't want to pressure Trump, and they don't want to do national stuff. They're all supporting state things, but nobody will do a national thing. And I really think that's where they have suspended the First Amendment while they're legislating.
Are these nonprofits
into bankruptcy?
Are they nonprofits?
Political action, not political action, but you know, I know Glenn Beck. I tried to reach Glenn Beck. He didn't answer me, obviously, but like he was running a lot of anti-Obamacare stuff, and I'm just not seeing anything at the national level. And I don't know what to do. I'll go by myself, but I'd like to do something that people will do.
Yeah, I think a lot of it would be how you frame it. If it's, you know, if it's framing the overall taking of our rights, then that's fine. And it may be something that has to start on the state level. But
really the where and when. I want to do 4th of July in DC, but there's never going to give me a permit. And if they are giving permits, they're going to have a big parade.
You won't have a permit.
And if I can't really get a permit, I could go anyway, but how many, you know, could I tell people to meet me there? I don't think that's fair.
No, but I think what you're going to find is a lot of people may not respond because you got to think logistics. One, if let's say you want to get 50,000 people, let's say it's just, but now
500.
You got,
I would take 500.
Well, you might get people to drive, but now people aren't going to fly because it's a pain and they can't do it as much.
And they have no money.
There's no money. And to be honest with you, if there's a lot of nonprofits involved in this, like we remember there was this thing, and I know we don't bring up scandals about other people with administrations, but there was this little IRS scandal that if you got on the radar screen, then, you know, with all this money being given out, if you are one of those people that are supporting something, they're going to be like, hey, you got money from us.
That's a good point. Why? And you know, what the Federal Reserve is doing right now is giving away a lot of money they're buying corporate bonds. Who is going to risk not getting that bond?
There you go. I got a couple more, but before we do, I want to talk about Flynn a little bit before we go. A little bit about Flynn getting kind of the charges dismissed. Sure. I want to talk to you about cocktails, so get ready because I have a thing of whiskey here now. And
nice.
Before we do that, though, I'm going to post this. Let's see. And I don't even know if there's a question here, but I'm going to go ahead and let you kind of read over it and see if you want to respond because this is more about you.
All right. Do you think the complete closure of our society due to this virus, quote, would have gone through had Obama or Hillary been in, as you say? It'll take a Republican. Well, look, this is what I think.
Here, let me drink this. Let me drink this with my pinky up as I listen. This will be interesting.
Oh, is that your nod to my cocktails?
No, this is a nod to. I think it'd been way worse under Hillary or Democrat. But go ahead.
I think that two things. I think that this is primarily a debt bailout for something that was coming.
Oh yeah, it reminds me you said something. Keep talking. Yeah. I got something to go.
So this is a debt bailout for something. They had to do something, and they needed to shut down the First Amendment so people wouldn't balk at the bailout. They need to shut down the Fourth Amendment so we couldn't figure out what was going on. They need to panic people, which is what they're doing right now. Panic, panic, panic. The Fed panicked people. And as I recall, Hank Paulson in 2008 panicked people to get the bailouts through. So how could it unfold under those guys? I think this is the best bet for them. I think they would have had to do it, and they would have had to lock people down because I think it would have been as bad.
If you believe this is about something bigger than whoever's in office, then you have you have to kind of think it would have gone almost the same, except every party would have played different roles.
Yes. The liberals would have said, my health, my body.
Yeah.
Although the liberals are the vaxxers, so they had to.
That's another, we need to do a podcast.
Which is wrong too. Like I remember when Governor Moonbeam, which my mother thinks is very disrespectful, he was the last governor, Jerry Brown. He instituted, I think, like mandatory vaccinations for kids to go to school, which is so not a crunchy granola thing to do. And that's when I really realized, like, where have all the liberals gone? They're not anti-war. They're not anti-vax. Like, this whole thing is flipping. And Trump is the labor guy and closes the trade up. Like, it's just, they're just flipping this time. They're actually Europeanizing it, in my opinion. But
so I'm going to just completely regurgitate something I heard because, and I'll leave it up to your crack report, research staff.
Crackhead.
Which is, if that's your research staff, sure.
It's the crackhead who does my research.
Did you just call Beakley a crackhead? I don't know how that works. No, I know you do your research.
He does his own research.
No, but New York and California were basically bankrupt states anyway. And a lot of the stuff that we're going through right now with the bailouts, the money they're getting to cover cost and where some of this money may go to is kind of especially if they keep going forward. They said, hey, this is going to go on for the next, not just month, but months. Like housing, housing, no rent, all these things that was going to kind of maybe cause a collapse in those states.
Well, Italy was on the verge of collapse, which is why I thought that they were the ones who stepped up to be hit the hardest. But I haven't thought too much about the states except for this. This is how absolutely upside down and irrelevant principle is to people of a partisan nature. This idea of not letting state and local taxes be tax deductible is like mathematically preposterous.
Say that one more time. I didn't understand.
State and local taxes. The current administration and Congressmen have ushered in, the Democrats are against this, but the Republicans brought it in. State and local taxes are not deductible from the federal tax return anymore.
Okay.
So if New York had a 51% tax rate and the feds had a 51% tax rate, you'd have to pay 102% taxes to work.
Right.
Right. So it's absolutely wrong. Even countries don't do that to each other. Honestly, like it's mathematically preposterous. And people were like, fuck them. They're liberals. They just are feeding off the tea. And my response was, they're going to get their way. And if they don't get what they want from their own tax money, they're going to get it from the feds. And if they don't have the votes for it, wait till they get a popular vote to come down.
Yeah.
So then you got a popular vote and you have California and New York everywhere. And this is an example of that. They're probably hurting because of that. And they're going to look to the feds and say, you did this to me. They're going to get the money.
I had to go in for a physical yesterday, which is really weird. I haven't been to the doctor in a while since before the virus. And I don't get out, I'm the boy in the bubble. I've got pre-existing stuff. So they only had 4 people in the waiting room. One, it's north, south, east, and west. And you couldn't come in without a mask. You had your temperature. It was okay. But there's one lady sitting over here. I hear them behind me because there's me and the guy over there. And she's talking about insurance. She goes, I'm from California. And she said, the insurance in California is so much better because I've tried to get procedures done here in Tennessee and I just can't afford it and I can't do it. And I'm about just to have them done and just not pay the bill. She goes, in California, you don't pay for any of this stuff. And she sat there and talked and the guy go, well, maybe that's why California's almost broke. And she goes, well, and then she did and it was almost a classic conversation. She goes, well, maybe they need, I can't remember how she put it. It was basically taking care of people is more important than the budget. Cause you got to remember, I'm listening to this behind me happen between a lady and a guy sitting over here.
Was it just like making you crazy?
I had the Food Network on in front of me in the waiting room, and I got tied into lasagna or something.
Yeah, that's good.
But it's a real conversation.
Did you know
it's a real conversation.
In Tennessee?
Oh, I didn't know that. No.
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
I almost moved to Tennessee. My husband was thinking of getting a job.
Tennessee is awesome.
I would have loved it. But let me just tell you an uplifting story that has to do with that, or a quick one.
Yes,
so I know somebody who had, I don't know what his status was. I shouldn't say anything about him personally. He was a guy who didn't have any money.
Okay.
He had 2 heart surgeries and they were each in the tens of thousands of dollars. He had no money, no insurance, nothing, no access to government, anything. This was in Atlanta, both of those surgeries over time, he started paying his bill like $200 a month, were some benefactor came in and paid it off.
Oh, wow.
And I think that they're there because when it happened the second time, I was like, there's some philanthropist there who is just looking for that and probably pays it all off. Like just doesn't tell you in advance because he wants you to make the right decisions.
Yes.
But then just pays it all off. And with the amount of surplus wealth in this world and the amount of harm that surplus healthcare can do, I think a free market in healthcare and, you know, a little ennobling of man and not disennobling man, we'd solve a lot more of this problem.
That's how it we kind of circled back to where we started. If I ever hit the lottery, that's probably when I won't keep most of my money anyway. But I think that's kind of how we started off. Neighborhoods, communities would take care of the elderly because my mom and
how it used to work.
Churches would help take care of the people in their community. And there was, and again, it's not good or bad. It's just different. And I don't think, just like I'd say to you, I'm not sure we can go back where we are in the reality we are. I don't know if we can get back to that, but it sure feels like taking care of people that are around you is the easiest and the best use of time and money.
I think that is the essence of why immigration is so fostered by the powers that be at every level. Just whether they have to use economic war or actual bombs, they scatter communities, ancient systems that don't plug in. Families, people who don't see, used to be people who would emigrate to this country because they thought they wanted to work hard and make money. And like a large proportion of them, I found out recently, went back. They couldn't hack it. There was no safety net and they went back. But the people who stayed were the ones who opted in on this culture. And it was a good thing, in my opinion. And my ancestors come from that era. So, but now you have people who are blown away and the only place to go is here. We have these big programs that are off the books, so you don't see them. They're not watched. But what happens is you have these people who had a system that worked for them, and we destroyed it, or the coalitions that drop those bombs destroy them. And they come here and they in turn splinter the communities that they're placed in. So these like quasi-private companies take Somalians and put them in Minneapolis. Like there's no natural progression there. And then you have a complete lack, not only a lack of community cohesion, but actually some tension.
Because you're asking people to assimilate when it's not their choice.
They don't want to. And if they don't have to function economically, if they're on some kind of welfare, they don't even have to take a shower, shave their beard, or wear the clothes that we all agree to wear as a signal that we're there for the same reason. This is what culture is. And this is what I think is the reason that they really want to plug everybody in up to the system and have absolutely no competition from community for culture. Or, they want them to be dependent, but they also don't want any little cultures to diverge from the kind of soulless material consumerism that they have spread around the world, mostly through war for 500 years.
Okay, Flynn, all the charges were dismissed. You're an attorney.
What the story was. You know what?
I mean, my buddy Eric Buchanan, who I had on, he's an attorney.
Didn't he say hi?
Yeah. And I played rugby with Eric. He is one of the smartest human beings I've ever met.
I see your teeth. You play rugby?
Oh yeah. I played rugby.
Oh, you do play rugby. I know. I made a cocktail for you.
He travels the country and talks to other attorneys. He's just super smart. But we talked a little bit about this off the air about the Flynn story and how he runs into people, and I have too, that just they read the headlines one way or the other, and this is what it is. And he's like, they've not read the timeline and the conversations that went on behind the scenes and understand why he was even in trouble in the first place.
Well, as a rule, for me, when your problem is that you lied to the FBI or you had a cover up and they're not actually charging you with an underlying crime,
there's no crime.
That looks like a setup to me.
Yeah, and it wasn't perjury. That's the other thing. It wasn't perjury.
Right. That's a good point too.
Yeah.
But it was I thought it kind of seemed like what he was doing was a reasonable thing for him to do. He asked the Russian guy if they would vote against the sanctions. I think it was like an Israeli settlement thing. And Russia said, we will not vote against those sanctions. So if they come to a vote, you cannot count on us. So then the next step was to try to not let it, simply help us not take it to a vote. Then shortly after the guy rejected Flynn's advances, Obama implements sanctions. And he said it was about Russian collusion, but I wonder if it was because they weren't doing what we wanted them to do at the UN. I don't really know. And that was it. He called them back. Katie McFarland told him to call this guy back. Jared Kushner told him to call him in the first place. Katie McFarland told him to call him back and say, hey, tell him to just suck it up on the sanctions. We'll deal with it later. And
but also it was the whole question when he first sat down, he thought he was just talking there. When the first time he had the conversation, it wasn't like an official interview. And then they came back
so
and
he was probably just keeping confidentiality.
Yeah. And when he came back, they said, listen, even once the documents were released, are we out to get this guy to lie? Or are we trying to find the truth, basically? And
you're not allowed to lie to cops, but they can lie to you.
They
can lie to you, but you can't lie to them.
I've just had so many friends go, I've never seen anybody get off with perjury charge. He wasn't charged with perjury. And then they were threatening his son with this I don't know what I
would consider what he was what he was doing to be like legitimate transition work, and that it wasn't even, he might have just wanted to not, that it was a national security thing to not talk about it.
I just thought it was
what I just said probably made people like we're doing stuff behind the scenes for other countries with other countries. Like that's weird.
That's the way it happens.
No, I know it is the way it happens, but maybe he didn't want to like blast that to anybody. Maybe he felt like it was something. He was the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. Like this guy is not a guy who tells stuff.
Yeah, well, and it's not near as bad as when you don't know the mics are on, you lean over and go, hey, just wait till after the elections and I'll have more flexibility.
Oh, I know. But, I will tell you this. For Manafort, Cohen, Flynn, Weinstein, Epstein, from the beginning, I always say with these guys, I will believe that they're going to do hard time when I see it, because I think the majority of the stuff that you see in the news, the majority of the stuff they make a big deal about is meant for you to focus on that. It's like a magician's trick. So a lot of times I think these guys kind of know what role they're supposed to play and play it with the assurance that they won't really have to face the music. Michael Cohen might be an exception on that one because he did tax fraud, which nobody works in government is going to let you get away with that, I think.
All right.
So I don't know if that was a little bit of a setup. Sorry.
No, tell people how to find your podcast and more about your Patreon, please. And what does that mean? You do something with Binkley on Fridays?
Yeah. So this is what we do. We have the Propaganda Report is the name of our kind of brand. We do a daily podcast, and you can find everything we do is under Propaganda Report anywhere you listen to your podcasts. We do a daily show called the Drive Time News Blast, which is 30 minutes of news of the day, up to the minute, from a perspective of truth, liberty, and justice. That's what we do. So it's like 5-10 headlines and what we think about it. And then for every 30 minutes, we add another 15 minutes for patrons. So for $5 a month, people can sign up and get a 45-minute daily podcast most weekdays. And then as a bonus, which is fun, we do something like this, but it's private. It's called the Disappearing Patron Party. It's 1 hour, 2 cocktails, and no record. So twice a month we get together. I make a couple of delicious cocktails. Binkley drinks beer and Jack Daniels. And people can come and chat with us, but I let my hair down and the video disappears. No one ever gets to see it again.
That's, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, what she just said is propaganda, because if she says she's letting her hair down, she's looked at it 1,000 times before she doesn't just let it down.
I actually look at my hair.
She doesn't just let it go.
But I don't think at all about what I'm saying, which can be a little scary for me.
Yeah. You were just speaking about your attitude inside the podcast. You were not referring to your little hair.
And there's almost nothing that disappears like that. So when I first started in radio, they would say, radio just disappears. You can really, if you make a big mistake, don't stress about it. No one is ever going to hear it again. But I came along kind of when that wasn't even true anymore because of the podcast. And this is the only thing I think I've ever done where really, I guess the agencies have it. But
somebody could screenshot it while you're doing it too with their phones.
Well, but it's what you say,
That's true.
What you say.
Okay, let's do this last thing. And your Patreon, they can find that on Patreon. Yeah, how do they find you? How do they give you money
for it? If they want to give me money, $5 a month. It's a lot. That's a lot of news. That's a lot of truth and fun for $5.
I have a Patreon too, and I just haven't had. I've got 2 or 3 people that give me a little money.
What do you give? What do you sell? I'm not one for just give me money. I want to give you something. $5 is too cheap. So I have a couple of other levels for people who have a little more and want to support the cause. But it's patreon.com/ propaganda report. That's how you do it. But and
during the break, I have $5, $10, and $20, and you can give $1. It doesn't matter. Yeah. But I'm working on T-shirts because I'll have a T-shirt that says "Comfort is the enemy of growth." I'm a big believer in that. If you're comfortable, you're not growing. But I've got these other ideas.
So depressing.
But right now, if you give 20, what I'm doing is I give a shout out to a nonprofit of your choice.
Yes, I have a 20. Oh, it should be for a nonprofit. I have a $20 level that we do allow shout outs, but I feel like anybody who's giving me $20 a month does not want to tell anybody about it.
No, but I want to give it to, I won't even say their name. I won't even say their name. I'll just say, hey, someone gave me $20 and this is for
now veterans. Patreon has a feature where you can give it your logo and it'll do that merchandise for you. Now it'll probably cost you more, but
I didn't know that. That's awesome. Okay, we talked about Patreon. Everybody can listen to my podcast at duringthebreakpodcast.com or dayfirepodcast.com. And are you back to doing cocktails yet?
I'm certainly drinking cocktails. There's no question about that. But the cocktail thing. So
long
the cocktail
stem cigarettes.
When I kind of saw, I didn't see the writing on the wall, but I've been deplatformed before. I kind of felt that if I continued to speak openly in this increasingly censored environment, I would probably get deplatformed one way or another, either the podcast or my radio show or whatever. So I wanted to do the cocktail thing as a kind of socially acceptable backup plan. And it's such a joy for me. So, but it's kind of a lot of work because I want the pictures to be perfect, I care about the lighting and everything like that. And it took me longer to take a picture of the damn drink than to drink it. So I don't know. I'm slowing down now. Like most people are kind of lazy right now, but I've got all these, I've got to take care of everybody in my house and night and freaking day. So it's a little tricky to make a big scene about my cocktails with all my kids running around.
Well, I just think you ought to repost some of your older ones then. Every now and then, just sprinkle one in.
I have great recipes. I should post them, and there are free pictures I can put up until I can put my own pictures up. So,
or just take a different picture of you. You don't even have to be having the drink. Just little headshots here and there, doing stuff.
I don't know. I don't overdo that. I'll save that for you. You'll be my exclusive
because this is my headshot
outlet. You make me look good, Clint.
No. You're on the screen with me. Of course I'll make you look good. That's like when you came. Okay, so this is full transparency. So she sent me these nice headsets, and this is Monica being sarcastic and funny without meaning to be. So we come on at the very beginning before we go live, and I go, hey, by the way, thanks for these headphones. They're killer. And you go, oh, do they make a difference in the quality of sound, or do you not give a shit? And I went, oh, that's like, have you stopped beating your wife yet? And I was like, yeah, they make a difference, and I do care.
Somebody last time said there was an echo.
But and those people are negative.
That, right. You're just like, oh, don't cater to the haters. It's like, well, I think he just wanted to hear it.
Life's too short.
If you don't care.
If you don't care. Man, well, hey, last thing, we may be doing something on Saturdays now. We're going to try.
Yes, we're going to try. What I want to do. Yes, because you like it when I have energy and don't do it after the podcast. So this is what I want to do. I want to rehabilitate my YouTube channel. I took all the stuff down because I had been gotten a strike. I didn't want to just get totally taken down. And I just thought, I really need to maybe put some video up there. And I love this where we get to chat with people. I think that's super fun. So what I want to do is every Saturday afternoon, maybe 3:00 Eastern for you, 12 o'clock if I'm still in California for a while. And that we could do this. Maybe do it on Facebook and then put it up to YouTube later, but we could have this conversation. We could have the chats, but if it's every single Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern, then people will get used to it and they can pop in if they want. We can have conversations.
Well, the reason I brought the questions on screen is to actually show you that if we were to capture this video and use it on YouTube, the questions that we're talking about will be able to be seen on YouTube.
Oh, so the chat isn't, but the questions are.
Right. So if there's a question that we like, we pull it up. Bam.
You are good. So is it annoying for you to try to curate at the same time?
No, they're right there in front of me. I've left off a bunch. Eric Buchanan said, hey, let's just leave Clint in the dark when I was doing the lamp. No, so I kind of pick out the ones that I think are contributing to the.
I like Gary's.
Oh, yeah. Love Clint. Well, that's the other thing. You can see it too. So if you see me not referring to a question, this is casual enough for you to go, hey, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Love Clint's podcast with Monica. Always interesting and thought provoking.
Yeah.
The thought provoking, I give credit completely to you.
I want you to put it up so that people can.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on a second. Let's just do this real quick. There we go. Thank you, Gary.
Hi, Gary.
Gary's been on my podcast, and I think I've said this to you.
Oh, fun.
He is a local businessman here in Chattanooga, but he's also an actor, and he's been on the sets of big movies, like with Harrison Ford, The Avengers. I mean, he has some great stories. And of course, during the break podcast.com, that's the kind of conversations I have. We just have some really good times. How
long is that? Is a during the break episode?
They go anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on, well, because I tell people all the time, when they ask me how long should a podcast be, my answer is, how long does it take to have a good conversation? And it's until it runs out of gas. Well, the car stops driving when it's out of gas.
That's what I feel like with the comments. Like if they're good comments, you can.
Yep. And if they were still coming in, we would still be talking.
There you go.
As the way we're doing it now, we're getting ready to end it right now.
Yes.
We're getting ready to
wrap it up.
Are you good? All right. So me and you'll talk before Saturday, and we'll do one at 3:00 Eastern time, 12:00 your time.
On Facebook, right?
On Facebook, right here.
Okay.
And then we'll get used to this on Saturdays, and then we might divvy it up and try YouTube live one day. We'll see.
I'm in no hurry.
There we go. Thank you, Monica Perez.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
Bye. Have a good day. See you, everybody.